Welcome to the Recruiting Masters podcast brought to you by the CFC Insider. We're Katie and Clint, and you are listening to another CFL Draft edition with Quincy Forde. And Clint isn't with us today, but Quincy is going to be enlightening us on the linebacker group. Quincy, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. I know you're a little bit under the weather right now with a sore throat, so we won't get you talking too much, but before we get going, just for everyone listening, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter @ChatFootball, Instagram, CFC_football, and YouTube. And don't forget to purchase your exclusive CFC Insider Gold membership today for access to rankings, analysis, and daily football recruiting news across Canada. So we are going to start off with the number one pick overall, Tyrel Richards out of Brampton, Ontario. He went to Clarkson Football North. Then he was at Syracuse, and the Montreal Alouettes picked him. He was also a CFC 100, played for head coach Larry Justanis at Clarkson. So Quincy, what can you tell us about Richard?
Yeah, Tyrel Richards, Montreal actually traded up from, I believe it was the 4 spot and swap picks with the Elks to get up to number 1 to take Tyrel Richards. He's a guy 6'4", 230. He's very athletic, and that's part of what enticed teams to take him. Ran a 4.6 40, put up 19 reps on the bench press, 37-inch vertical. All the measurables are there. And part of why that was so important with him this year is because he did not play for Syracuse in 2021. He entered the transfer portal coming into the season and then ended up, I think, training to go pro.
He did. He had a lot of his training stuff on his Twitter account, didn't he?
Yeah, I believe so. Training with Larry Justanis, I believe. Yeah, he didn't actually play in 2021, but back in 2019, he was their special teams MVP before taking on a more prominent role on their starting defense. Mm-hmm. He moved around from linebacker to defensive end for them, and I'm not sure. He never really stuck at one position, but he's a guy with tremendous athleticism and has the ideal build at 6'4", 230. Very much a plus when it comes to pass rush ability with that experience coming off the edge. And he's a guy who can definitely bring the heat coming off the edge or on blitzes up the middle. Sideline to sideline range is evidenced by that 4.6 40. And sideline to sideline range is very valuable on the bigger field up here in the CFL. He does a good job maintaining his leverage, working against blocks and disengaging them. Even if one arm stays engaged, he's a guy who has good motor and finds a way to make a play despite having one arm engaged in a block. He is a high effort guy.
Well, I know I've spoken with his dad a few times, and if he's anything like his dad, he's probably a pretty entertaining guy to be around. That guy's hilarious.
I've only met him a couple times.
Anyway, we'll move on to Ryder Varga out of Regina, Saskatchewan. He played on the CFC50 ranked Leboldus High School, and then he went to the University of Regina, and the BC Lions picked him 29th overall in round 3. What do you have to tell us about Varga?
Ryder Varga I had at 22nd on my board the last time it was updated. He's an interesting case. He is going back to school for another year at Regina.
Okay.
He's been an academic All-Canadian every single year since he got to that school. Mm-hmm. He is taking engineering, so clearly a smart guy.
Yeah.
And 2021, he was a Canada West All-Star. It's always interesting with these guys how some of them only were like one-time All-Stars, even though they probably would have been All-Stars more than once if they had a 2020 season. 2021 Canada West All-Star, 6 games. He had 48 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, a sack, a fumble recovery, and a pass breakup. And that's kind of a theme that you'll see with all the linebackers we're talking about today, that they tended to stuff the stat sheets in multiple categories. Varga, 6'2", 230, solid linebacker build, 4'7", 40, 35-inch vertical, 7'03" 3-cone, 9'8" broad jump. Another athletic guy, not quite as athletic as Richards, it seems, but maybe light version of Richards, Tyrel Richards light. He's a guy who's a very smart player on the field and clearly in the classroom too. Another one of those who appears to have plus pass rush ability coming off the edge. He seemed to almost come off the edge as much as he played in the middle at Regina, and he was very successful there. perhaps a little more raw than Richards with his pass rush moves, but his athleticism was able to help him there too. And he used his arms well. So a guy who I'm excited to see at the professional level come not this year, but next year.
Let's head over to Josiah Shackle. He's out of Sherwood, Alberta. He played at CFC50 Bev Facey way back when Chuba Hubbard was there and they played together as teammates. So then he went to the University of Alberta and the Calgary Stampeders drafted him 14th overall in the second round. Talk to us about Shackle.
Yeah, I had him at 23rd on my board, just behind Varga, because I would totally be able to be convinced that Shackle, I actually forget. I think it's Shackle. I think.
We've always called him Shackle, but you know me and my pronunciations, they're always wrong.
Yeah, but Shackle, 2021 President's Trophy winner. He was, just like I mentioned before, a total stat sheet stuffer. In 8 games, he had 75 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and a pass breakup. I found his film, I watched a little too much of him coming off the edge untouched and making a big play.
Yeah.
And there were also plays where he got off blocks, shed blocks, made plays, but it's a case of perhaps I feel his highlight tape could have been a little bit better arranged to show off how good he really is.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I had Varga ahead of him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely a guy who showed some big plays on tape, but would have liked to see a little less plays of him going untouched, because to me, those aren't really highlights, but rather show up on a stat sheet looking good, but aren't necessarily impressive plays to be watching.
Yeah.
But he is a very impressive player nonetheless. He moved from halfback to linebacker for 2021. He played the Sam linebacker spot for them, I'm pretty sure. He's one with the cover experience coming from that halfback spot, and that's obviously a plus in the CFL, having coverage experience as a linebacker. He's kind of prototypical Will, whereas I thought Varga was more of a Mac linebacker and Shackle's more of a Will, so that was also a differentiating factor between the two.
Mm-hmm.
But Shackle, yeah, obviously stats through the roof with 75 tackles in 8 games, pretty much 10 tackles a game. And over a tackle for loss a game, just padding the stats everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's what gets you the President's Trophy, I guess. But 4.77 40-yard dash, 18 bench press reps, 6'9", 7'3" cone, and 4.29 shuttle. So he shows off the quickness there, and that will be very valuable at the will spot, especially with the hash marks moving in. And 18 bench press reps also shows off that country strength. He's one who I'm excited to see with Calgary, although they kind of have that will linebacker spot pretty backed up right now.
Down, yeah.
With Cam Judge being the starter, then they have Fraser Sopik behind him, and then Shackle behind him. So nice little group they have going.
Well, our next player is out of London, Ontario, Tommy Bringy. He played at St. Andre Bessette, and then he went to Laurier. Talk to us about Bringy.
Yeah, London guy who would have been nice to have him stay in London and play at Western, because he's quite the player.
Of course. Everyone should just play at Western.
He's another one of those guys, like I talked about kind of last week with Valente. He's a guy who to me is just one of those guys who's a playmaker. And he was a 2-time OUA All-Star both in 2019 and 2021 this year.
Yeah.
And through 7 games, 51 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery. And what's different with him compared to the last guys is he had 3 interceptions this year.
It's awesome.
And genuinely, in watching them, a couple of them were quite impressive. Like, he seems to do a good job in that shallow underneath area of reading the quarterback's eyes, and has good anticipation breaking on balls there. So they were genuinely impressive interceptions, not those kind of gift-like interceptions. And that's part of what stood out to me about him, even though he's not the quickest guy with a 4.95 40.
Yikes.
And that puts him a little slower and less athletic than the last.
I think Clint can run a 4.95.
4.95 still all right. I'm probably barely scraping past that, to be honest. That's
come on, you can run more than a 4.95.
4.95. I don't think it's bad. I think it's not good, but it's not terrible. Maybe for a player of his caliber, it's not good.
That's what I'm getting at. Like,
Yeah, maybe a little lacking there, but still shows some explosiveness with a 35-inch vertical. Maybe just not the fastest or quickest, but still an explosive athlete. I'm pretty sure he has long arms too. I've heard that. Not sure what the measurement is.
well, and if you can anticipate the ball, then you're already a couple seconds. Well, maybe not a couple, but you're already ahead of the game, right? So if you're not as quick, well, then your brain's going to get you there faster.
Yeah, right? That's exactly what I was getting at. He more than makes up for that perhaps lack of range with his anticipation and IQ and ability to follow the play. Does a great job getting off blocks with those long arms and high effort level. And I'm pretty sure he made Saskatchewan's active roster. I think he's been their backup will linebacker.
Where did he go? What round did he go in?
Round 4, pick 36.
Okay.
Yeah, he was one of my guys who I liked more than it seemed the general public did coming into the draft. But then Saskatchewan seemed to like him just like I did. So I had Bringy at 34 on my board when the draft rolled around, and I was seeing him projected far later, like round 6 to 8. He showed up at the combine. I remember he looked, despite not being very fast, he did a really good job with his hands and his anticipation in coverage.
Yeah,
during the linebacker running back one-on-ones, and I think that definitely helped him quite a bit, showing he could still cover both in man and zone as a guy who's not quite as fast as some other guys.
Well, we're going to move on to Nate Edwards. He's out of Ancaster, Ontario, played at Bishop Tonos, and then he was a McMaster product. The Edmonton Elks picked him in round 8. Talk to us about Edwards.
Edwards is one of the guys I've seen less perhaps than some of the other guys. I think he was only a OUA all-star just this past year, but he was an all-star both on defense and as a special teamer, which obviously provides value there. And for the record, all these guys who we've talked about are guys who have the potential to be very much large impact special team players.
Special teams, yeah.
Although I think the last 4 guys we've talked about could have the upside to become starters at points. Whereas I think these last 2 guys we're getting into are more special teams ace kind of guys who won't ever really be starters in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Edwards, through only 5 games in 2021, had 33 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and a pass breakup. And the deal with him is he seems fast in a straight line with a 4.8 40. That's pretty good for a guy who weighed in at 225.
225.
But his 3-cone and shuttle were both not very good. So I'm not sure he's the quickest guy, more kind of fast and just a straight line, which is a little less than ideal, perhaps. You have to have that lateral quickness to be able to fill gaps at the middle linebacker spot. He would strictly be a Mac rather than a Will at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, relative to these other guys, not sure he's elite in coverage per se. Yeah, he was picked up in round 8 by Edmonton, and I'm pretty sure was cut at the end of training camp. Maybe I guess he can go back to McMaster then if he so chooses.
He could, or maybe Western.
Our middle
Masters.
Our middle linebacker spot's pretty locked up right now by a future CFLer, I'm sure. So.
All right, well, we'll move on to our last guy, Enoch Penny Larea. He's an interesting guy. He attended Tuckahoe High School. He's born in Ghana, but because he played his 4 years at McMaster, he was designated a national. So that's why he's on here. But some interesting things about him, actually. It looks like he started playing while he was living in New York and was named an all New York State player, but he also was an athlete in track and field as well. So just give us the lowdown on Enoch.
Yeah, Penny Larea, I have not really seen much of at all, but didn't really see the field at all at McMaster until this year when he jumped into a contributing role for their starting defense. He played that defensive end spot for them despite only being 5'11", 215. He went round 3, pick 26 to Toronto. And that is because despite his lack of general impact or sustained impact at the university level, only being a 1-year contributor, really. He is a freakish athlete. And I know you mentioned the track background, and that shows up on paper for sure, where he ran a 4.58 40.
Wow.
He put up 27 reps on the bench press. So
no, he didn't.
Kind of jacked too. Had a 39.5-inch vertical and 10-foot 7-inch broad jump.
Yeah. Wow.
So a guy who's very fast, very explosive, very strong.
Yeah.
And kind of a freak in all those regards. And he's one who is projected to just be a special teamer through his career, I believe. That's why he went in round 3, just because of those kind of freakish measurables. And he should be a good special teamer for a while, given he made Toronto's active roster. Not sure he's ever going to be a guy who becomes a starter.
Yeah.
Given he was barely a starter for McMaster at the university level. Just a freak, and should be a very long-term contributor on special teams for the Argos.
That's it for us today. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Recruiting Masters. It's been brought to you by the CFC Insider.